Tell us about, the path to the first games this year. How's it going? How you feeling?
Yeah, it's going well. How we do things is never really cast in stone, but we always have a loose plan. We've already had our first event of the year, which was the BC Indoor Games on the Easter weekend, and we were very happy with how things went. March to Spain Reel is a March to Spain Reel. It went very well for us. We felt really good about that. We played our new medley, and then we decided that after we played that, we should have a good listen to it and dissect it, listen to what people said. And so it's been tweaked a little bit. So the medley, our new medley that you're going to hear on the weekend in Victoria, will be a little different from the medley we played at the BC Indoor. Just a little bit, so I won't give too much away. You can compare and see what we did, and later on, if you ever want to know why we did what we did. It was just, basically, we decided to tweak things because we thought it was ever so slightly weak in a couple of little bits, and we wanted to make it better.
When you say weak, do you mean in terms of execution and consistency that you expect at that point, or just structurally, compositionally?
Structurally, the medley, basically just the way that it was driving towards the finale, it was thought that we could maybe just tweak it a little bit. And when I say tweak, we took 16 bars, dropped it, brought 8 bars in, and then took another 4 bars from another part of the medley to build into the finale, and we had to do that. So, we had to learn just 12 bars of music. So you would think, oh, no problem.
But in context.
But then we had to alter this because it now changed what we were doing there, and how we got from here to there is there doesn't exist. It's now that there that exists, and trying to get a little bit. And then, of course, the hardest thing is when you've been playing something a certain way for several months, like we've been working on this pretty hardcore since the start of the year, mid-January. It's trying to remember not to go there because your brain's wired, and so you've got to sort of, it doesn't work, unfortunately, like my computer, which is like hit delete and then it's gone, and then just cut and paste the new bit in and away. I wish it was like that,
Right, absolutely.
But I would say that we're all pretty happy with where the direction is. It wasn't a change or a tweak, shall we say, for the sake of change or a tweak. It was, this could be. And then when you sort of listen to it, it's going well. So,
how do you find yourself approaching medley construction specifically? I mean, you've obviously been a part of some, all-time awesome bands that had a profound effect on how we construct medleys. How do you and your team, how do you guys approach that today in 2018 versus, let's say, 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago or before?
Well, we try to be creative, working within the parameters of a 5 to 7 minute performance, that you have to start with 2-3 pace rolls and march in a circle. So there's some things that you just sort of have to go along with and make that happen. We always try to get original tunes. Things that other people have not played. It gets harder as, like, for example, somebody said to me, oh yeah, that finish to the medleys just like we've done before. And I said to them, this is one of the younger pipers in the band, I said, don't talk to me about how to finish a medley. When you've started a medley with a 4/4 march and finished a medley with the 3/4 march and won the world's doing it, you can talk to me about how to finish a medley. Don't talk to me about finishing a medley till you get a little bit more green. You know what I'm saying?
That's right. And when was this?
Well, it was just this past year, trying to figure out something. We're always looking for just a little twist, something in it. And so I think that we've got a really nice balance. We've got about 10 tunes in the medley this year, which is kind of normal. It ranges sort of 10, 11, sometimes 12. And off the tunes, there's only one tune that we ever played before, and it was part of our concert repertoire, a tune called, is it Coppermill Studios? We played that as part of a fun jig concert set, and we decided to go with that. And so that's the only thing that's been in our repertoire before, but it's never been in our competitive repertoire. And then what I try to do is I throw my 10 cents in, shall we say, as far as tunes go. Guys, here's my ideas. Do whatever you like. Because I've always been of the ilk that if you don't use my idea, that you truly believe that the idea that you're going with, that somebody else has submitted, is better. So if it's better, I'm interested in better.
Yeah,
I don't have all
absolutely.
the answers. I just have suggestions that might get us to where we go. So I didn't have any idea on an opener. I had an idea for a reel that has become one of the focus points of the medley. And that was, I chucked in a bunch of Strathspeys, but I wasn't married to any of those Strathspeys, shall we say. And as I often say to Alan now, and I used to say to Terry Lee in the past, I would say, you know me, old school Strathspeys, play it, pick any two, you can't go wrong. If you're stuck, go to the Green Seaforth Highlanders book. All the great tunes are in there. It wouldn't matter which one you picked, you would pick a great tune.
It's going to work out.
And so I submitted about 4 or 5 tunes to Alan, none of which were playing, but the Strathspeys for me are just like, I'm drooling over the Strathspeys. This is so cool, you know?
Cool.
So I just help with that process, and then the tunes get picked, and then I write the scores. So what you've got is tune A, first bar to last bar. Tune B, first bar to last bar. Get that out. And then it really starts.
Gotcha.
How are you getting from tune A to B?
Gotcha.
How are you getting from, you know, and how are we going to put it together? Are we just going to play like a hornpipe, stop, break into the jigs, stop,
Right.
slow air? No, we don't want to do that. That's kind of boring.
The transitions seem to be one of the few points where a band can really express creativity and an individual nature.
Right.
You know? And I mean, you guys have clearly put a lot of thought and exercised a lot of creativity in those transitions. Where are you on the design team in that part of the process? Are you a big part of working out those transitions and trying to come up with something new and cool to do?
I would say that, yeah, I'm always thinking about how we can get to the next piece. You know, sometimes straightforward is really good. For example, we go from our first jig to our second jig, and we use a little bit of what we would call a standard SFU break, where we hold the last note of the first jig, just one extra note, and then go. We've done it 2 or 3 times over the last 25 years.
It works.
It works.
It's cool.
And we don't want to do it all the time for 2 reasons. Number 1, it doesn't work all the time. And number 2, we're aware that we do it, but you know,
You don't want to wear it out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I could say that, well, every medley I play starts with 2 3-pace rolls, and then it starts. But you know, some things have to start and go in a certain direction.
Absolutely.
I'm always looking for interesting ways that we might get from one tune to the next, and how we might do that. One of the things that I'm always listening for is, on this break, should the drummers play the break, or should the drummers not play and the pipers play? Or should I bring something forth that says, how about we do this and you let us take the break, kind of thing. In this medley that we have, we kind of take the lead into the Strathspeys, and the pipers take the lead from the Strathspeys into the reel. So it's kind of like
It's a good balance.
you know, we take it, and then we get it going, and then we pass it back to them, they take it, and then we go. And it works. And then, so how do we you know, we've got like, I don't know, 10, 11 parts of reel, all round stuff. So how do you make that work? Do you just go from one to the other?
Right.
How do you make the breaks? You know, so for example, we play this really interesting arrangement of a tune called Rory Gallagher that was written by Gordon Duncan as a jig, and one of our pipers, younger pipers, wrote it as a reel. And it's absolutely fantastic. It's a great tune. And so I always say, a great tune is great no matter how you play it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
When people say, how do you mean? I'll say, well, you know, Layla. I always say, Layla, you know, it works. You know, it's got a little twist. So we take something like that, and so we took that reel, and we thought that it would go really well into a variation of a tune called Charlie's Welcome. It's not the 8-parted MSR tune. It's actually taken from the Glen collection, where there's a 2-parted setting of a tune, I think it's called When Charlie Comes Home. And what it is a round version of the first 2 parts of Charlie's Welcome that everybody would know from an MSR perspective. And so we're playing 4 parts. So we've taken 2 parts of the other 6 and kind of done our own, an SFU thing with it.
Cool.
So I was convinced that when we come from the end of the first reel into the second reel, it should be a great big massive crescendo roll, guns a-blazing, hey, get the body. And by the time I came back from a holiday, the guys had said, no, JR, we've got something, we gotta try this. And so I went with their idea, which was to play the 13-stroke roll, but to swell the front end of it, and then it's almost like sneaking in the back door. It's like coming to the party with your favorite beer under your arm and just sneaking in the back door and enjoying the conversation, as opposed to kicking in the front door and saying, everybody, have a beer, you know?
Right.
So I like to let things like that evolve through the people that are in my group. And
Excellent.
I like to try and see if I can come up with ideas, and I'm very quick to run with something if I know it's a better idea than mine.
So it's more of a team process.
Yeah,
where
I write the scores, and then we see how we might want to best present the scores because of the ideas that come forth from the guys. Dynamics, you know, what about a pause here? What about this?
Do you find that works better when everyone in the core has a voice and can actually contribute to the overall design of what's going on?
I think it works really well, but at times it can be a little frustrating too, because when I'm dealing with kids, and everybody in my core is a kid. My son is in the core, and he is, he's my kid, and he's next to myself. He's the next oldest person in the core, so they're all kids to me.
Right.
And like any kids, they get a little bit, they like the flavor of the day.
Right.
What's the flavor of the month? What's this week's fashion? Is next week's, old news. They're the kind of kids that, would like to have an iPhone every year, because obviously the one that last year is always like hopeless now. You've got to have the latest one.
It's dead.
And so they get a little bit like that, like sometimes there's a little lack of patience with, and one of the things that I've tried to get them to do in the last 2 or 3 years is, okay, I don't mind if we're going to change, but I want you to think, I don't want to know about anything that you think should be changed for the next 2 months. And then come to me.
Let it simmer.
Yeah, and see if you still think that that's a worthy change, because some things, music like we play in a medley, it needs to evolve.
Yeah, absolutely.
A bit,
And you have to live with it a little while to really get an idea of what works and what doesn't.
And sometimes I think that the younger folk, they like to change it and making it different makes it cool. But then they grow tired of the change, and they want to change it to something else. And sometimes it goes a whole 360, and you end up coming back to what you had 4 months ago.
Absolutely.
And at times that's not a bad process either. It's kind of just managing that and kind of letting it kind of develop and evolve.
I have a question again regarding medley structure. Do you ever feel limited or confined
every time
in what we can do with medley construction? Again, a guy like you has seen a wide evolution of what we have called the medley and pipe bands, and to me, a comparative newcomer, it seems that I'm going to use the word stuck. It seems that we're stuck in this formula, and we can't seem to get out of it. And so we turn to things like transitions, or these teeny tiny things where we can interject 1% of individual nature as a band. And I'm always left asking, well, why can't a band, especially a grade 1 band, why can't we do whatever we want? So are we stuck? Is that an accurate perception? And what can we do to maybe become unstuck or get to that next evolution where bands have more creative freedom in the medley section?
I think in some ways we're stuck, and in some ways we're fine. If I could change 3 things, the top 3 things that I would like to change in the medley competition. You don't start with 3-pace rolls, you don't play in a circle, and you play for longer than 7 minutes.
Wow, you just zoomed out from where I was thinking. That's excellent. No three-pace rolls. Don't play in a circle.
Maybe you only play one.
No, I think that's awesome. No, I was thinking a little bit more about tune order and selection and construction.
Right.
But I mean, you're talking about the whole presentation.
Yeah.
So say that one more time. No three-pace rolls. Don't play in a circle. And
no three-pace rolls. And make the time longer.
Make the time longer. How much longer?
Well, for example, grade 1 bands play a medley that's 5 minutes to 7 minutes in length.
Right.
It's been like that since the inception of the medley, I think 1969 when it came in. I think that that's too short.
Okay.
We are always chopping our medley to get it under time. I think the grade 1 bands, it should be at least a 6 to 8 minute go.
Okay.
And I wouldn't be adverse to a 7 to 9 minute go. Okay. I just think that that's long enough. I think you get a better chance to present a proper picture instead of cutting corners on a picture.
I mean, I personally think that's a more interesting idea. You know, if we're evaluating all facets of the competition, rather than saying expand how many sets we have to play and compete, just to expand the time.
Right.
You know, and I don't want to involve the MSR in this part, because for me, I love the MSR the way it is. I think it should remain the traditional standard. It's beautiful, it's unique. Leave that alone. But the medley, you know, if I see us in 10 years, now we have to play 3 5-minute medleys, that's almost unfathomable. But if you say we have to play 1 9-minute medley, that's interesting. Because again, that's really where, if you are a professional level band that's striving for artistry and high achievement, you can not only execute at unbelievable levels, but you can have a presentation that is uniquely you, and then compare that to other groups of the same level of artistry. That's exciting to me. And are we going to get there? And what steps do you see being taken now that would maybe lead us to that or another evolution?
Oh, I don't really know, and I'm too busy.
Yeah.
To be part of that.
You got those 4 sets to contend with again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people just, you know, like I am very busy doing what I do, teaching a lot and trying to keep things going in a direction that I think is good. So, but, you know, there was a time in my competitive lifetime when I thought that the format for playing in a medley would change, and that you would walk in, set up, and start. It's not going to happen in my competitive lifetime. Let me explain it in one really simple way, and a lot of people would get this. I've played at over 40 championships in grade 1. Now, ask me, what do you recall as being the biggest cheer that ever went up at the World Pipe Band Championships for a medley performance in every year that you've played? I can tell you what that is. Several years ago, a band called the Shots and Dykehead, under Pipe Major Robert Matheson, turned and faced the audience at the very last segment of their medley, and it brought the house down.
Yes.
The audience is telling you that they would like you to face them. I couldn't imagine if for example, I just went to a concert on Friday night. I had the time of my life. Great band, the Eagles. Absolutely amazing. Every now and again, a musician in the band would have their back to the audience because he was interacting with somebody else in the band.
Right.
But I think the pair of tickets cost about $500, and they were worth every cent. Now, you tell me, how much would you pay for a ticket to go and hear the Eagles if they faced away from the camera for the entire show? You tell me what that ticket's worth.
Right.
I just think that people who play in musical groups face the audience, except pipe bands.
I think the conversation here then becomes, is what we do at the Highland Games, the Worlds or otherwise, is it only about the competition, or is it about having that music continue and having people listen to it? And I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I agree. I think we can have both. And perhaps that is a simple step, is to have something that acknowledges the audience.
Yeah, I enjoy the competitiveness of it all.
Yeah.
You know, I really do. But I want to make. I'd like it to be a better. The presentation to be better.
A better experience.
You know,
Yeah.
People want to see what's going on and hear and let's face it, it's meant to be played in a way that's presented.
There's that, right? I mean, just a single bagpiper, the sonic perception is such a different experience from behind versus in front.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that all of the pipe band drums is the same way. I mean, we all know if you are facing a bass drummer, you, like the bass drummer themselves, have the worst seat in the house. You don't actually hear that instrument. The tenors and the snare are awfully similar. Mm-hmm. You don't actually get to hear what that instrument sounds like unless the player is facing you. You know, all the more reason.
Yeah. So I would love to see that. You know, but I know that in my competitive lifetime, none of those three things are going to happen. I'm pretty certain of that. But I'd like to think that in my lifetime, I might get to go and spectate and notice that all of those three things have happened.
I think that's a beautiful sentiment, and certainly something we can talk about more to see how it would make sense to integrate something like that. But what about the three-pace rolls? Why do we do it? It clearly has a very it's very utilitarian. It's very functional. Band ready, play.
Here's why we do it. Mm-hmm. Because we've always done it.
Okay.
That's why we do it.
All right.
I think. I can't come up with.
Gotcha.
And back in the day, we always done it because we only played MSRs in competition. Now that was just before my competitive time. Mm-hmm. I've only competed in the era of the modern medley and MSRs. Mm-hmm. It was just before into the late '60s. It was changed. I think maybe some historians will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that 1968 might have been the last time it was MSRs. Okay. And then in '69 it became medleys.
And prior to that, were all the bands still beginning every single set with three-pace rolls?
Yes.
Okay.
And to my knowledge, it was always that. So you would have to go back to the first unofficial World Championships at Cowell, in I think like 1905 or 1904 or so, whatever that day was. And certainly from what I've been told, and I've certainly been led to believe, that since it became the World Pipe Band Championships, as originally run by the Scottish Pipe Band Association and now the Royal Scottish Pipe Band Association, it's always been by the right, quick march. It says actually in the rules. Now I don't know how far back those rules go.
Sure.
I'm all for tradition.
Absolutely.
You know, like I like old tunes.
Yep.
You know, it's very hard to get me excited about a new tune because they often lack the depth of music that classics do, you know?
Yeah.
So it's not that I just want to see things get changed, but I think that there are ways, you know, there's ways to do it. You know, like I hear people say, for example, oh, that's not how the composer intended it to be played. And so I say, oh, really? So how do you know how the composer wanted to be played? Did he tell you?
Right.
No, I just know. Oh, really? You know, like you can't play, you know, like I guess one of the most famous tunes for me would be Little Cascade. If you go to the Queen's Own Highlanders and find the music as published in the book with G.S. McClellan's name to it, there's not a dot and cut.
Right.
Now, I was told by some piping friends that he expected that you would just interpret it however you felt. Now, I've played the Little Cascade. I played it on the stage at Carnegie Hall with the band in 1998.
That's right.
And I've also played it in the Live in Ireland album with the 78th Fraser Highlanders back in the late 80s, where it was as round could be. In fact, we accelerando the tempo at the start of it, you know? I just like both of them.
Yeah.
I think, for me, that is the pipe band's answer to Eric Clapton's Layla. Derek and the Dominoes, unplugged. I don't know which one I like best. On certain days, I don't want to listen to the unplugged.
Right.
And other days, I only want to listen to the unplugged.
Right.
The Little Cascade, sometimes I just want to hear it played round. And other days, I don't want it round. I just play it. Play it as if it was an MSR, whether it be one of the world's great pipers, you know, playing that great tune. Just play it, because the greatness of the tune to me doesn't change. It's just great.
Absolutely. The parallel that we've drawn before that I often go to is, you know, I think about the music of J.S. Bach, and when I think of Bach, of the many things that he composed, I always go to his cello suites, because his cello suites compositionally are very similar to bagpipes. First, in that they're linear. There's not nearly as many embellishments as bagpipes have, but just the general approach to them is linear. Also, because this is music written many years ago, there aren't written dynamics or anything like that. And so now, since we have no direct line to Bach and he's not here to defend himself, you can play that simple linear music any way you want. You can phrase it any way you want, play any inflection or dynamicism that you would like. And though the bagpipes are obviously, you know, they're limited in what they can play dynamically, I feel like there's still a lot that can be done with these tunes, because great music is great music. And I think one of the hallmarks of great music is it stands the test of time and it's somehow versatile. You know, so even if you are limited to one dynamic, 9 notes, an assortment of embellishments, there's still a lot that you can do to make it your own. There's a lot of versatility, and that, to me, is one of the hallmarks of a great piece of music. And I find that in tunes like Little Cascade and a lot of other pipe tunes as well, that it's not just one way to do it. In fact, there are infinite ways to do it, and I think that's excellent.
Yeah, I just think that there's so much out there, and, you know, don't try and restrict. You know, I firmly believe a great tune normally stands the test of time, and it can be played in many different ways. Like you can change the time signature, you can change the feel of it.
Exactly.
You know,
the key.
You know, exactly. You know, like the Little Cascade. Could you play it as a jig? Sure, you could.
Right.
Could
Absolutely.
you play it as a waltz? To me, it's like really cool.
Absolutely.
It's just in a slightly. It's like it might take you like 4 or 5 beats to. Oh, I know that. What is that? Oh, that's so cool. And then you get into it, it's like, it's got to, you know.
Absolutely.
So I like experimenting with classic stuff, older stuff, and seeing
what can we do with it today?
What can we do with it today?
Yeah. What's the balance to be found for, you know, anyone who wants to write new music for bagpipes? You know, what's the balance to be found? How do they take the, you know, the lessons, if you will, of the classic pipe music? How do they balance that with exposure and other idioms and find really outstanding ways to compose for the instrument today? I think there are a lot of people out there that are experimenting a lot. They're trying things out. And some of them have bands to play their compositions. Some things work out, some don't. And what's the best way to go about that? How can people experiment and find new ways to compose for this instrument?
Try it. See what kind of reaction you get. There isn't a lot of new tunes that have just come on the scene in the last, let's say, 5 years. Like I hear a lot of tunes that are really quite old and being delivered with a twist that, hey, that's pretty cool, you know? So again, is that because people are looking for their rendition of Layla?
Right.
You know, by getting something and delivering it in a different way. I think that time will tell in terms of what tunes stick around and what tunes die. You know, like it was good at the time, and it's you never hear it anymore. And so I think that when the kitchen piping thing started in the early 1980s, there's a lot of good tunes came out of that, written by some really good composers and some of them have kept at it. And some of them, they've written tunes that it's like, nah, I'm a little bit indifferent to that. But generally speaking, I think that there's a lot of good tunes out there. I would say that the composers who I would say belong to that sort of group would be Robert Matheson, Neil Dickey, Michael Gray, Bob Worrell, Bruce Gandy, Gordon Duncan, Philip Greer, who used to write a lot of really nice hornpipes that seemed to end up in the Field Marshal Montgomery's repertoire, and there's a lot of really good tunes. So think about some of the stuff that those people have brought forth, and those tunes are really, really, really good. And in the time, there's been other people trying to do the same thing, and maybe with less success.
Right.
You know, it's if you give me a melody, I can work with it, but I'm not a melody maker per se. That's not what I do. So I couldn't imagine that it's actually any easier than writing a drum score. At least when you write a tune, a melody, your page is blank. When I write a score, the drum score page is blank, but it has parameters in which I can work within, and that's based on how the melody of the tune that I've decided to write goes, and so you have to work within those parameters. So, you know,
I think but having the opportunity to create or to compose is always really important, and certainly we have restrictions in pipe bands, whether we're talking about writing for bagpipes or writing for the drum corps, compared to a lot of other idioms. But you know, I kind of like seeing a lot of younger players experimenting with this stuff. Now, that doesn't mean I think you should just try to write a jig today and go compete with it tomorrow, nor should you just try a crazy thing with your tenor chord today and go try to compete with it tomorrow. But this is why, again, I think it's interesting to talk about, you know, ways that people can experiment with composing or can experiment with writing drum scores, writing pipe tunes, that doesn't necessarily end up on the competition field, so we can kind of figure it out over here, and then maybe some of that trickles onto the field to, you know, spawn something new.
Good.
Yeah, Reid, Maxwell.
Good.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Absolutely.